Well, good morning and welcome to Morning Gospel Fuel with Mr. G. It is Monday, July 6th, the feast day of Saint Maria Goretti, who is pretty amazing. She was born to a farming family in Italy, and her father died at 9 years old to malaria. She was 9, not him. And she was in charge of the house, in which her family shared with another family. I assume due to financial reasons. But that family was the Serenellis. But Alessandro, who was the Serenellis' 20-year-old son, made sexual advances to her and then she refused to submit to him, because he was going to rape her. He stabbed her 14 times whenever she refused that. So she was taken to the hospital, but she died forgiving him. He was arrested, convicted, and jailed. And during imprisonment, he repented. So after 27 years in prison, he was released and visited her mother to beg forgiveness, in which she granted it to him. So imagine the side of the mother. But anyway, he later became a lay brother in a monastery. He died in 1970. And she's one of the youngest saints to be canonized. She was beatified in 1947 and canonized in 1950 because she died in 1902 because it usually takes a longer process. Anyway, because of that, she is the patron saint of chastity, rape victims, girls, poverty, purity, and forgiveness. Today's gospel is from Matthew chapter 9, verses 18 through 26. Let's begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. While he was saying these things to them, an official came forward, knelt down before him, and said, "My daughter has just died, but come, lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus rose and followed him, and so did his disciples. A woman suffering hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the tassel on his cloak. She said to herself, "If only I can touch his cloak, I shall be cured." Jesus turned around and saw her and said, "Courage, daughter, your faith has saved you." And from that hour, the woman was cured. When Jesus arrived at the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd who were making a commotion, he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. When the crowd was put out, he came and took her by the hand, and the little girl arose. And news of this spread throughout all the land. All right, so we've got a lot of women today. We got the Saint Maria Goretti, which I'm going to go back to, and that's going to be part of our challenge today. But then we also have the faith of the official's daughter. And then we also have the woman with the hemorrhage, who had a hemorrhage for 12 years. And she wanted to touch the tassel because the tassels, just for historical sense, were worn on the corner of one's garment as a constant reminder to keep the commandments. So this official who was touching the tassel, because to my understanding, Jesus wasn't wearing the tassel. It was the official. But she went ahead and touched that due to seeking to keep the commandments. And of course, he was wearing it, which demonstrates that he was trying to continuously challenge himself to stay true to the faith as an official, as we should all as well. And then there was a commotion because of this girl that was dead in that separate story. But Jesus said the girl's not dead, but sleeping, because sleeping is a metaphor for death in Scripture. And then the daughter was cured, but then Jesus didn't, So, and then she rose, and then everything, and then of course the knowledge of him spread throughout the entire land. So of course naturally that would make sense because everybody thought she was dead, and here she was walking again. So that's just the story of Scripture with these two miracles and these healings of faith because of their faith from Jesus. So I want to go straight back. I want to go back to Saint Maria Goretti because I did some research on her, in which I would highly recommend. There's more than what I'm just going to tell you. But the challenge today is forgiveness, because Saint Maria Goretti is absolutely amazing. But what I'm going to read is a letter from the accuser, from the one who had raped her, Alessandro. So he was the one who raped her and spent 27 years in prison before he repented, and then he was in the monastery. He died in the 1980s, which isn't that long ago. Um, so I'm going to read a letter from him, the one who was the attacker, which I think is quite interesting. But also keep in mind, Saint Maria Goretti was 11 years old, and she forgave this guy for attempting to rape her and not doing it, but then killed her and stabbed her 14 times. Doesn't that just show her spiritual maturity at 11 years old? I'm still working on my spiritual maturity. Like, to get to that point is amazing. So that's why the challenge is centered around forgiveness this morning. And I already know this video is going to be longer, so I'm sorry, but it's very interesting. So the last thing, our letter. I'm going to read a letter from Alessandro, which is what he wrote on. Let me get to it. On May 5th of 1961. Maybe he died in 1970s. Either way, it was the 70s, I think. 60s or 70s, maybe he was. Oh, he was almost 80. Okay, here's the letter that he had written. This is the one who did the attempted rape and then killed Saint Maria Goretti. I am now almost 80 years old. I am close to the end of my days. Looking back at my past, I recognize that in my early youth, I followed a false road, an evil path that led to my ruin. Through the content of printed magazines, immoral shows, and bad examples in the media, I saw the majority of the young people of my day following evil even without even thinking twice. Unworried, I did the same thing. There were faithful and practicing Christian believers around me, but I paid no attention to them. I was blinded by a brute impulse that pushed me down the wrong way of living. At the age of 20, I committed a crime of passion, the memory of which still horrifies me today. Maria Goretti, now a saint, was my good angel whom God placed in my path to save me. Her words, both of rebuke and forgiveness, are still imprinted in my heart. She prayed for me, interceding for her killer. 30 years in prison followed. If I had not been a minor in Italian law, I would have been sentenced to life in prison. Nevertheless, I accepted the sentence I received as something I deserved. Resigned, I atoned for my sin. Little Maria was truly my light, my protectress. With her help, I served those 27 years in prison well. When society accepted me back among its members, I tried to live honestly. With angelic charity, the sons of St. Francis, the minor Capuchins of the Marches, welcomed me among them, not as a servant, but as a brother. I have lived with them for 24 years. Now I look serenely to the time in which I will be admitted to the vision of God, to embrace my dear ones once again, and to be close to my guardian angel, Maria Goretti, and her dear mother, Assunta. May all who read this letter of mine desire to follow the blessed teaching of avoiding evil and following the good. May all believe with the faith of little children that religion, with its precepts, is not something one can do without. Rather, it is true comfort and the only sure way in all of life's circumstances, even in the most painful. Peace and all good. Alessandro Serenelli, Maserati, Italy, May 5th, 1961. So there we go, guys. That is the challenge for today. Just some extra information. Sorry for the duration, but again, I thought it was really interesting and worth the while. Final thing. The challenge. Have I ever refused to forgive someone? Has anyone ever refused to forgive me? Starting right now, I forgive all who have hurt me, living or dead. Have a great Monday, and God bless. Oh, there's the jersey. It's the Bills, if you can't tell. God bless and keep it real. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.